So I must be getting a lot worse at keeping up with stuff because I had no idea that this project had a Kickstarter out or that it even existed at all up until about a week ago. But now that I have it, I gotta say the Monster Overhaul is so freaking good. Now, it's made by Skerples, who's like a super prolific person in the OSR, so it's not like super crazy or surprising that they would make something really good considering their last projects, but even so, the effort and just level of detail in this book is really, really impressive. This is one of those RPG products that, like, as soon as you're just flipping through it, not even really like reading into it too much, you can already tell you have something really special in your hands, or at least in my case, in my screen, because at the time of this video, I still don't have the physical. I was only able to find physicals at Composed Dream Games thanks to a friend of mine just sending me a link for it. Though it is like 80 Canadian, I think, maybe 80 USD, but I think it's Canadian because the distributor that I got from is Canadian, so I'm assuming they put it in our own, currency and not the American one. But even so, that is pretty pricey, not even including shipping, especially if you're down in the States. I think shipping from Canada is pretty rough, so I'm sure there'll be other ones in the States itself. At the time of this recording, there's about 70 left, so there's not really a whole lot left there, but I'm putting it out there in case there are any left by that time. On Drive-Thru RPG, it is 30 USD for the PDF only, which is pretty pricey. I do think it's worth it, and also I am a pretty big believer of, supporting small creators, especially ones who make really good stuff like Skerples. It's the kind of thing where it's like, if it means they'll keep making stuff, I don't mind it being a little bit pricier. Plus, they've proven that they can make really, really good stuff, and that they've also put out a bunch of stuff for free, so there is that. But I will say that if you are somebody where you're kind of, have a pretty tight budget, especially these days with prices going up everywhere, you might want to hold off. Or, if you have a friend who did buy it, maybe just check out the PDF they have, just skim through it, see if it's something you do like, and then if it is something you like, then you can go and buy it. Honestly, I should have probably done more research before doing this, just to check what the roadmap was for when physicals were going to be out. And I assume when Drive-Thru finally does get the print plus PDF, if they do get one, I'm not totally sure if that's actually going to be a thing, but if they do, there's a good chance it won't be that much more expensive. It might be double, just like it is on the website I grabbed it from, but there's a chance it might only be like 45 or 50, so you might be able to get it for cheaper than while getting in print and a PDF together. The writing, layout, and art are all fantastic. The amount of art and its diversity is extremely impressive and really complements the style of book that just gets all those creative ideas going with all the different tables and content inside. And all 20 chapters have a full page spread, and they're all super, super nice. The layout is thankfully becoming the standard with a lot of books these days. It has very clear bold headings, clean tables, information delivered in short, succinct bits. All stuff I really, really love and especially appreciate when I'm just trying to go through a book really quickly. The table of contents is broken down into the 3 main sections and its subsections on one page, including useful sidebars and the generic assets I'll talk about in a minute. The beginning sections are full of how to use the book and great GM advice on using monsters and running old school games that I recommend showing to your friends looking to get into GMing. Or even for yourself, if you're an experienced GM who's been doing it for a long time, it's not bad to remind yourself of some skills that might have gone a little bit rusty. I know there's a lot of times where I'll be reading through these sections myself and I'm like, oh man, I have completely forgotten to be doing these things. All the advice is delivered clearly and efficiently, so it's not a big slog to get through. I actually found myself enjoying this section, even though it's one I often skip in these kinds of books. The section on monster tactics has a pretty good little bit on how to run monsters more effectively and more evocatively, as well as Skerples telling me to go touch grass. And then the book asks, what is a monster? And just on the next page, it has... Anyway, let's get to what makes this bestiary so good. And just like in a quick sentence, if you're just going to plan to skip this video, what it does is that it's practical and usable instead of just being basically a big encyclopedia of just stat blocks. For a start, there are a load of generic assets that are great for an on-the-fly need while running a game. You have a generic village, inn, world map, wizard tower, shipwreck, gothic manor, and way more. They all come laid out with quick descriptions to jump off of, and these are incredibly useful if you're running a sandbox game or have a short notice game coming up and you just need a location quickly and stuff to populate it with, or as just a bit of inspiration. After that, the book is laid out in quite an interesting way that I do like, but I could also see kind of being confusing, and I'll show you what I mean. Just the way it categorizes creatures is just very unique. For example, you have the first chapter on people, a chapter on dragons, and a chapter on elementals. But then you also have a chapter called Dungeon, a chapter called Thinking Beasts, and the 4 seasons, summer, spring, fall, and winter. Then you also have terrain chapters such as hot plains, mysterious mountains, and stormy seas. I also like that it includes a sci-fi one as the last chapter, considering the old school gaming has a strong sci-fi foundation, as well as it seemingly becoming more common for me to see an interest in sci-fi fantasy in the hobby recently. All this to say that I do like the 20 chapters and how they are divided, but I could just see some confusion for like 10 seconds when you go into the Thinking Beast chapter looking for the Mind Eater, but it's in the A Wizard Did It chapter instead. In the table of contents, it does literally list out every creature that's in here, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. I just thought it's something I should point out. On top of this, throughout the book, you have all these useful resources that make us act a bit like a Swiss Army knife, because there isn't just stat blocks of monsters here to use or random encounter tables. You also have stuff like 1d100 adventurer or wizard tables that give you names, appearances, short backgrounds, and items they may have. You also finally have a little box in many of the entries called menu, where it tells you the taste and mouthfeel as well as what happens if you eat said creature. So this is some fun flavor. One of the great parts about this bestiary that makes it as useful as I say it is that it has all this information on how to make more interesting encounters when you're running stuff on the fly. So having tables on the goblin section that you can roll on for description and special abilities is great. But what is even better is all the tables explaining what a creature is doing when you find it. For example, the goblins dressed up as humans doing mocking impressions or doing rigorous combat training. These may seem small, but I think a lot of us who've been gymming for a while have had some pretty bad days where, our brain's fried during a long encounter, or, just having off days of GM. It happens to everybody. And your off-the-cuff encounters that you make because you're running a sandbox game, or you need to pad out stuff, or for whatever reason you just came up with something real quick, and it wasn't all that great. It's kind of just, oh, you're in the forest walking, and then these wolves or little green goblins attack, or they open the door and there's just some bandits hanging around. It's mostly just a boring common encounter that probably won't kill the PCs, or aren't doing anything that really interests your PCs or have them engaged. Not that making every encounter being really, really good is attainable. I think all of us on a long enough campaign, or even just in one game, can just have some pretty bland stuff, but I think it'll be more useful to show you how you can use this through an example. Let's take a classic powerful monster that most people will have in their games at some point or another if you're running a sandbox game, or just, most fantasy games tend to have these, and that's the Lich. And the Lich does have a longer entry at about 4 pages long. Most of the monsters here have 1 or 2, maybe 3, but this one's pretty big, and you'll see why in a second. Let's say you're running a sandbox game, and you made it pretty clear that there is a tower that is more than likely the home of a Lich, and the PCs have been warned of this, but halfway through a session have decided instead of going to the small dungeon they were planning to go to, they want to go see the Lich knowing how dangerous it is. So you tell your group, okay, I don't really plan for you guys to go there just yet. Do you guys want to just take a quick 10-minute break, just grab some snacks, do whatever, just chill out on your phone for a bit. I just gotta roll up some stuff and just figure some things out real quick, and then we'll get the game going again. Then, before we even get to the Lich, we can go straight to the generic Lich layer and use that as our base. It has the descriptions you can give in bullet points, has some tomb aesthetics and vermin to take inspiration from, and you can just fill it out with some of the random encounter tables in the book, or just grab some stuff that makes sense to you. As for the Lich itself, the stat block part is pretty bare bones, or as much as it can be. Calling it bare bones, no pun intended, doesn't really make sense if you look at this page. I'm mostly just saying that a lot of the other ones are pretty small. You might just want to use the stat blocks, that you already have for your systems, because all the monsters in here are pretty generic monsters that you'll find in D&D. All these work, it's just that if you already want some with a little bit more meat in their bones, I feel like those might work a little bit better. And you can just use these stat blocks. I would just use these stat blocks. But I know a lot of people online tend to want a little bit more stuff than what's in here, or want it more concrete for the system they're using. So I just want to point that out, that you might want to do your own. If you're the kind of person that really wants every little bit accounted for, I would probably mix this part with whatever Lich or whatever creature you have in your own system. But real quick, let's just run through what it has. You have its hit dice, armor, morale, and all the stuff it can do, such as spells and abilities, which, like I mentioned, for the Lich is obviously huge, but most others are pretty manageable. Just as importantly, however, you are given flavor text, which I think you need as just a reminder of some flowery language to hype up your powerful Skelly boy, which you may not be good at coming up with on the fly, considering you're in the process of making an easy-baked dungeon in 10 minutes. To go along with this flavor, the second page delves deeper for really separating this Lich from others with example Lichy names, appearances, and lair qualities, which could be good inspiration for what you might quickly add to the dungeon. The pronouncements of Doom are awesome for anybody who's like me, who sometimes forgets the roleplay aspect when running a big monster battle, so throwing out a few lines like, "Your ancestors will weep salt tears when they see what I have done to you," and having those quickly at hand just weirdly excites me for some reason. And finally on this page, you have omens and side effects of the Lich to add to its presence, such as making the PC's hair fall out, or old wounds reopening, to really show what dark powers the PCs are dealing with here. Next, the third page has example Liches, which are very helpful as they have names, goals, and example projects and problems, which are just quick and easy seeds for roleplaying if the Lich can be negotiated with and doesn't just immediately kill the PCs for breaking into their lair. If you want to roll up your own, however, there is a table for Lich goals and current projects, a well-written explanation on Lich goals, and all these combined can give you a better idea of this Lich's character instead of just wanting to destroy the world and being evil because they want to be. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And finally, on the last page, You have a blurb on how to use phylactery as well, along with 3 tables fleshing out what the phylactery is, where it is, and how to destroy it, as well as the previously shown generic Lich lair. So this is a pretty hefty creature for an example, but I think it does really outline how you can use this book so easily and on the fly, without too much trouble at all. And I feel like if it's this useful for a really complex creature like a Lich, you can see how easy it is to make an interesting encounter with some bandits fighting some goblins, or, you know, whatever it might be that you need really quickly. If you haven't seen my videos on the Dungeon Alphabet or the Adventurer's Almanac, I recommend checking those out because I think they would be fantastically complementary books to this one at your side for running fantasy games. And before we wrap up, just to quickly show you how well the random tables work to give you ideas immediately, let's look at the combined tables for the Stormy Seas random encounters. You have the omens to give some flavor and for setting the scene as well as foreshadowing, but you have stuff like one remora followed at a safe distance by a hunting group of 2d6 merfolk, or 2d6 pirates on an improvised raft surrounded by 2d6 frenzied sharks. Not only does it have the page number for every creature listed, it also has like an ongoing scene. There's action happening. There's a world happening outside the PCs. Everything's not just waiting around for them to show up and then be interacted with. They have their own stuff going on, and the PCs might get involved with it. Maybe the merfolk are following remora back to its lair to exterminate it and its offspring, and maybe they'll ask the PCs for help in exchange for money or like valuable parts of the remora, and this might just kick off a small little side quest where, you know, the merfolk can tell them about the area, or, you know, might have information related to the main plot, or they could just be random guys out here, and this could just be a fun little distraction away from the things they've been doing outside this. As for the pirates, maybe they've actually met before and they actually robbed the PCs in the past, but this time this could be a really fun RP scene because now the PCs have the upper hand and they can toy and bargain with the pirates, or if they're feeling like especially cruel, maybe they cast like a reverse mending spell on the raft itself and just leave the pirates to their doom. Those are just the things that came to my head immediately, but you could do a bajillion different things with these setups and all the other ones that you can find in this book. All this to say that essentially, if you just find that you have really bland encounters, you want them to just be a little bit more spicy, you know, just have things that are going on a little bit more, put a little bit more meat on them bones, this is just a really good book for that. I feel like On the Fly is what makes this book different than other ones. There's a lot of their bestiaries and books with flavor that I think if you have time to prep beforehand, they work as well as this one. This one just really excels in being super usable when you're under pressure. Also, I saw this last minute, but there's some really good indexes in the back. For example, there's a table for creature sizes, tiers of creatures by hit dice and how they might get there, such as a Lich coming from being a vampire, wizard, necromancer, or night hag. The next one is a generic Mega Dungeon Devil Spread, which is a great overlook for somebody trying to build one. It's simple, but lays out the different themes and the pages for the monsters therein. And finally, there is the alphabetical index of all monsters, which is so good for people wanting to use this book for custom monsters, such as Mothman using a Banshee stat block with a different skin. I feel like this section is invaluable for people who want this kind of direction, and it's 7 pages long, so there's a pretty good chance this covers what you need. Also, just look at this conversion for a kangaroo. Anyway, that's my review for the Monster Overhaul. It is pretty pricey, but I do think it's worth it for the reasons I mentioned before. You know, supporting small creators, it's really good. I think it's probably my favorite bestiary that I've seen so far, but if you are in a bind or you only have so much money and you're looking for adventures and other stuff, maybe go with that instead of this. But if you are in the market looking for different resources to run your games, this is a really good one, and I would not pass it up if you have the money for it. Also, check out my RPG podcast, Bun and Games. You can get here on YouTube, or you can get wherever you get your podcasts. It's mostly just me rambling about random stuff. I'll probably be doing a lot of stuff there that, you know, are a bit more informal than what I do for videos. Not so much reviews, more just me, you know, talking about games I've played, first impressions of certain things. Maybe I'll go through stuff like Reddit RPG horror stories and, you know, talk about my own, as well as just sort of discussing the ones I find there, and just that sort of stuff, where I'll just be a lot of random podcasty stuff. I only have 2 episodes for now, because it's not really like a weekly thing or anything like that. I just kind of do it whenever I feel like it, but I'll probably try and do more if people do like them, so do let me know if you do. I might also, as bonus episodes, just put up some of the discussion videos on there, because I know a lot of people want, you know, like the 5-hour Worlds Outnumbered talk, you know, in audio form when they're in the car. So I might do stuff like that if people want that. So again, I don't do too much call for action stuff because I think it's a little bit tacky and annoying. But seriously, commenting below really does help me know what you guys like and what you guys want me to do. Also, big thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I really appreciate it. It helps me put money back into the stuff, and also just keeps the lights on, so I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. You're all awesome. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and stay safe out there.